Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. My name is Angie Barker Jackson, and I am the Vice President for Institutional Advancement here at Berkeley School of Theology. We are so delighted you have joined today's first Friday Lunch and Learn session. Please introduce yourself in the chat if you haven't already done so. No matter where you are or what time it is for you, we invite you to enjoy your lunch or a snack during this time. That is, of course, why we call this Lunch and Learn. This series is sponsored and planned by the Alumni Engagement Office. Melissa LeBeuf, Assistant Director of Alumni and Donor Engagement, is co-hosting with me today. And throughout the presentation, she will be monitoring the chat. Be sure to drop your questions there for the Q&A time throughout the presentation. Also, just a reminder, Melissa is your source of information about future First Fridays as well as our alumni events. Thank you, Melissa. These Lunch and Learns have been designed with three purposes in mind: learning, connecting, and being. Each month features a different topic and a new guest, and our hope is that the topics will stretch and challenge our minds, that we will connect and reconnect with others in the BST network, and that this will be a space of radical belonging. Today's special guest is one of our own and a local writer whose star is rapidly rising, Ms. Kat Croswell. While Kat has been writing much of her life, she refined her craft while completing her Master of Fine Arts degree at the California College of the Arts. Kat's body of work is a creative force. She's a multifaceted artist and writer. She's published works of fiction, nonfiction, poetry, short stories, and even songs. Plus, she's a creative in the world of abstract art. Kat has served as a panel reader and editor for Chicken Soup for the African American Soul and has participated in the dynamic and diverse Voices of Our Nation's Arts Foundation Writers Workshop under the mentorship of renowned fiction writer ZZ Packer. In 2024, Kat's debut novella, Pieces of Eight, a Harper family mixtape, was published and released into the world. And since then, her characters have become parts of our lives and our families as we've grown to love them. Kelechi Ubozo, the co-editor of We've Been Too Patient, Voices from Radical Mental Health, had this to say about Pieces. Time travel through a weathered boombox to the south side of Chicago in the 1970s to hear the exhilarating music and lives showcased in Kat Croswell's Pieces of Eight, a Harper family mixtape. Join our heroine, 8-year-old Jasmine, Jazzy, Piccolo Harper, as she and her family experience joy, grief, and good trouble in this tender, tragic, and dramatic coming-of-age story. Kat dreams up sweet, powerful images juxtaposed with the major and minor chords of life in an innovative writing genre she has named a literary mixtape. Prepare your hearts to burst, break, and to be on beat to a perfectly timed 8 count. Now, I have to say, though Kat does in fact work at BST as the registrar, we are not here to talk about work today, so don't even ask. Welcome, Kat. We are delighted for you to join us for this conversation about the making of pieces and the musicality of stories. I'll just go ahead and let everyone know that we are going to conduct this session as an interview, and we welcome you to be part of the conversation. So while Kat and I are talking, if questions occur to you, please drop them in the chat anytime. And we'll pause once or twice during our time together to bring you into the conversation and give you a chance to get those questions answered. So here we go. Kat, it's good to have you be our guest today. We're really excited to talk about Pieces of Eight, a Harper family mixtape. So,
thank you so much.
as we get started, do you want to say anything before I just start peppering you with all of my questions?
Just thank you, both you and Melissa, for having me here and for hosting this wonderful Lunch and Learn. And I just hope that it is enjoyable and entertaining for all those who choose to witness it, and hopefully send questions. So let's go.
Okay, let's go. Well, I want to know, when did you first know that you were a writer?
Oh, geez. You're taking me that far back. Okay.
I'm taking you that far back. I mean, Pieces of Eight took us all the way back to the 70s. So you can take us back, right? To when you
fair.
first realized there were stories inside of you that had to get out.
That's fair. I would have to say, well, I don't have a specific age. I don't think. I do remember that at around, I want to say 7 or 8, my oldest brother at the time, he would frequently, secretly, watch me write things down on pieces of paper or on toilet paper or whatever, and he never knew what it was that I was reading, or at least I didn't think that he knew what I was writing. I'm sorry. Until one day he brought in a handful of little pieces of paper that I had just left around our house. And he said, you're a great poet. And at 7 or 8, I had no idea what poetry. I don't even think I'd ever even heard of the word poet or poetry. And I asked him what that was, and he told me, and I said, "Oh, I just write what I feel or what I'm thinking." Mm-hmm. He said, "Exactly. So you need to do this. This is what you do." And I said, "Okay." And it just kind of, there were other things, but it just kind of went from there. And it was something. Writing was something that I just could not do, if that makes any sense. Even at that age, I was very observant and very attached to what was going on inside my body. And I always felt the need to just express that. And when I expressed it, it always came through in the form of writing and in the form of music. So those two were interconnected with me from that moment up till now, today. So I think that's how the whole writing bug just got me.
That's really lovely to think that sometimes we don't think of our siblings as encouragers. We often think about them in terms of rivalry and things like that. So to think that a sibling, an older sibling even, would see something so special in a younger sibling and encourage them, that's really beautiful.
Well, if you knew my brother Meech, then you would understand. It wasn't a stretch for him he was just that kind of person. So
Oh, that's awesome. So then I'm curious about one or two other things. And one is, do you have those scraps of paper that he found? Those are kind of those original scraps of paper that he encouraged you to write?
No. We moved too many times. We moved a lot when we were kids. And over time, stuff like that just kind of got lost, unfortunately. But I do have other things that don't go quite that far back, but yes.
Yeah. So it sounds like you said that you just kind of had to write,
Mm-hmm.
and that it was a way for like your feelings to be expressed and things like that. So was it coping, and did that kind of ground you through um, different like seasons of your life? Has writing served to be that kind of anchor
Oh,
activity?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Writing and music uh, literally saved my life. I think if I didn't have those two forms of art and expression, it's really hard to imagine, even for me, that I would still be here.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's the level of impact those two things have had on my life.
yeah. Well, speaking as a person who knows you in this season of your life, I'm really glad that you started writing all of those years ago and kept it up, because I can't even imagine a world without your creativity. So
Oh.
I'm glad your brother encouraged you in that way. So this story, this book that some of us have and have it, mine, the binding is broken, and everything. Um, I know that that was not an overnight project. So talk to us a little bit about the development of that story, those characters,
Mhm.
how long that took, like to take shape, not only in here, but then like, to get to this form that we have.
Yeah,
Can you take us through that?
I'll do my best. um,
It's all you can do.
yep. For me, whenever I'm writing, sound plays a very particular and necessary part of what I do and how I create. And when I say sound, I'm not just talking about music. I'm talking about things as small as raindrops, the sound of raindrops, or the
Mm,
sound of the wind, or the sound of someone's voice. It may have a certain timbre that really attracts my ear. Um, and with characters, I basically watch people. I watch people a lot, and I've been that way since I was a little girl. And I watch not just their mannerisms, I watch when they are doing nothing. And so then I kind of go into a thing where I'm wondering what they're thinking. And in my wondering, sometimes those thoughts that I really don't know about start to become stories, if
mm,
that makes sense. And it took me, with these characters in particular, from Pieces of Eight, um, the protagonist, Jasmine Piccolo Harper, who she starts us off in her story, in this story, at the age of 8 years old. She's a very precocious, wise, and hilarious little 8-year-old girl. And she reminds me so much of some of the girls that I grew up with in my old neighborhood. And yes, I'm from the south side of Chicago. I grew up in the mid '60s through the '70s in south side of Chicago, and Jasmine reminds me so much of uh, she has a lot of elements of different girls that I grew up with, including me. And she and her bunch of friends remind me of the many, many adventures that either I or friends of mine or neighborhood kids where I was growing that we kind of went through. And of course, some of this in the book is greatly exaggerated, and some of it never happened, and some of it very well did happen, but you know, the names and all that stuff were changed, and locations and what have you. The book itself in its entirety, how it came, how long it took for it to get to this point where it is now a published work. Believe it or not, it took about 20 years. 20 years because as the folk in my youngest daughter's generation would say, and probably my oldest daughter too at this point, life was just lifing.
Yeah.
And it surprised me actually how long it took for me to get it to the point where I knew that it was ready. But at the same time, even in all of that, I knew that there was no way that I could put it out into the world without it being true, without it being a true work, you know, and not go based on someone else's expectations in terms of when it should come out, how it should come out. And I really just kind of stuck to my own guns, if you would, and I just believed in my process, and that's really important, to believe in your own process and what you know to believe to be what's ready and what's not. And this was ready. It just got to a point when it was ready.
Your spirit told you it was time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just let it go. Let it go. It's okay. Let it go.
How hard is that to have something, you know, that you've been creating and holding on to and maybe keeping in here for 20 years to like take the risk to offer it to other people? What's that like?
It's life-changing, honestly. Because, you know, if you think about it, all of us take various types and levels of risks on a daily basis. And I will say that during this particular time that this country is going through, just walking out the door for a lot of us is a risk. And I'll just kind of leave that there. I don't want it to become something else, but that's the truth. So anytime that I've ever submitted anything for publication, while yes, I may feel or have felt that it's a risk, it's never let me down. It's never not been the right thing to do in the time that I did it.
I think that's the quote of the day. Really, I think we all could remember that. The worthwhileness of putting ourselves out there and taking that risk.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So when you think about these characters that lived so long within you and now are out there, you know, you've mentioned Jazzy, but there are others. Do you have a favorite? Should we assume that Jazzy's your favorite or not? And tell us about your favorite character, whether it's Jazzy or another.
You know, that's a hard call because Jazzy, while she drives a lot of what's happening in this story, there are others, as you mentioned, that absolutely have a place in the telling of this story. Jasmine, she's like my oldest child that while she drives most things, um, she knows she's my favorite, but she knows she's my favorite. But she also knows that she has a lot of competition with
Oh, interesting.
uh because I have to say her bestie Beans, uh she has just kind of got me wrapped around her finger, as a character and what she brings to Jazzy's life and what they bring together. Um, but like favorite, I'm actually going to go with Buster.
Oh, say more about that.
Buster, for those of you all who have not yet read Pieces of Eight, Buster turns out to be many things, but one of the things is that he and Jasmine, as we go along in the story, they form a relationship. And Buster brings a lot to the story. He brings a lot to Jasmine. She brings a lot to him, I have to say, as well. But it's just something really admirable about Buster and the way that he sees the world, the way that he cares for his mom, the way that he cares for his little brother, um, the ways in which you kind of see his mind kind of working as they, um, as you go along with them in all the things that are going on in pieces. So yeah, Buster holds a really special place in my heart.
Okay. That surprised me. That's
I know.
good. I love to be surprised.
Yeah.
So that's a favorite character. Do you have a favorite scene?
I'm sorry, a favorite.
I said, do you have a favorite scene? And I'm going to ask you if you're willing to read a snippet of a scene. Is did you bring a snippet of a scene to share with us?
Very short snippet of a scene.
Okay. Is it your favorite or is it just something that you just really wanted to share? It's okay with me either way.
It's only one of my favorites because it's the in between the beginning of the story and the thing that happens that we won't talk about. So
That's
it's
right.
the in between
The
that.
thing that shall not be named. There
Right.
you go.
Right. But yeah, it's a very, very short. It's not even a page. Do you want me to just read that or just?
Yeah. I'm going to invite you to go ahead and read that. While at the same time, I'm going to remind our guests, our audience today, that we'd love if you have any questions for Kat, for you to drop them in the chat while she's reading, and maybe then we'll pause and take a question or two.
Awesome. Okay, so the only setup that I will give you is that, and this is chapter 2, and the name of the chapter is A Reason for Everything, and the song that's connected to this particular chapter is called I Can See Clearly Now. It had only been a few months after the Harpers moved into their house that Joanne, that's the mother, not only forbade them from going anywhere near the train tracks, but had also admonished them from opening the ceiling door in her and Philip's closet leading to the attic. When Jasmine asked why, Joanne leaned her head to one side and replied, "What did I say?" And that was the end of that, at least to everyone except Jasmine Piccolo Harper. There were only two people allowed in the attic, Joanne and her husband, Philip, the grown-ups. The day before, the Harper kids and the rest of the children in the neighborhood planned to dress up for Halloween, Jazzy had an idea. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, that's a cliffhanger. They had an idea. So, like, we have to get the book and keep reading to know what the idea is.
Right.
So, okay. All right. We know that Jazzy's a thinker, and that even having a stern, what we might, a traditional mom, right? Does not kind of stomp out any creativity or curiosity that she has, or necessarily rein in her behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's funny. I don't see any questions there yet, so we'll just move forward with our conversation until I see some pop up there. Although we do have some comments from folk that Mama Joanne is no joke, and that she reminds people of their own no nonsense mother. So that's fun. We could probably all identify in some way with having a no nonsense mom like that. So you mentioned earlier, Kat, about how music is such a big influence on you, not just your writing, but your whole being, your life.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, when you're writing, how do you use music to like set the mood? Do the different pieces that you write like each have their own playlist? Do you have a go-to creative playlist? Or does the playlist arise out of the writing? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
It's kind of all of that. I don't have a set way that the music influences what I write or how I write. For this particular piece, the soundtrack, if you will, just kind of it took some in some places, in some chapters, it took me much longer than others to decide which song which song I thought would complement what was going on in the scene. And you know, being the type of music person that I am, and the fact that I grew up as a singer, and I grew up being able to play with several genres of music as a vocalist. You know, it's like the more music you know and the more music that you are educated on, to be able to pin that down in your writing is a real challenge, because your mind has explored so much in the music world that it's really hard to get focused on one thing. And because this story is taking place in the 70s, in one sense, it made it easier for me, because to me, and this is just my humble opinion, the music of the 70s, none of the stuff happening right now can touch it.
I agree. There's nothing like it. Right. Yeah.
For so many reasons. And so in that way, it was easier for me to just go down that 70s genre, but at the same time, because I grew up listening to so much of it, it was a challenge, but yet it was probably the funnest times I've had writing something, because I got to listen to all of this stuff. Some of it I had not heard in like years and years and years, and had forgotten about it.
Yeah.
So in that way, it was just a joy to do that, and exhausting.
That's really fun. Yeah, and exhausting. Well, since we last visited the chat, we've had several things pop up.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a couple of those questions. I've already told someone that their question is going to be saved for last.
Okay.
Because you and I already talked about the last question, and it's been asked, so we'll go there. So Lauren Ing, first of all, says thank you for this gift of a book, Kat. And her question is, who might you have been in conversation with during the writing of pieces? And it could be people who are alive today or those who have come before us.
Who might I have been in conversation with? Definitely my grandmother, who passed in 1994. She reminds me a lot of Joanne, the mom in the book. Her kind of no nonsense, fast, so definitely I was in conversation a lot with my grandmother in writing this off and on. I was definitely in conversation with the late great Dr. Maya Angelou, because for me, poetry started me, and poetry will probably finish me. And Dr. Angelou played a very significant role in the person that I became as a writer. Definitely conversations with her. I'm very, very connected to ancestors. Yeah, it just holds a very, very special and deep place in me.
Yeah.
And I was definitely in conversation with my late brother, the one who I mentioned. Yeah. Definitely, because he helped me to remember some things that I think otherwise I wouldn't have been able to remember, like, very, very specific things that go on in the book. Just in terms of, like plastic on the sofa, and you know what I mean? Yeah.
Speaking of the 70s, right?
Right. Right. So yeah, I had a lot of influence, not just those who have passed on, but people in my life now.
Yeah.
They probably didn't know that conversations that we were having were. So watch out, folks.
Oh, so any of us in relationship with Kat should be careful because we might show up in the next story. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, speaking of special people, there's been a special request from a special person in the chat.
Okay.
You have the final say, but there has been a request from one Kira Allen.
Shocking.
I know, right? Right. To hear Jazzy's description of Buster, which can be found at the bottom of page 140 and the top of page 141. So there's a request for you to share that. I know you said you only wanted to read one short section, but again, speaking of special people and special requests. That's something.
You said 140?
Yeah, I'm told at the bottom of 140 and the top of 141, we can find, oh, I see. Yeah, probably where that starts. It isn't Buster's stocky build. Maybe that paragraph is what Kira's referring to. Or maybe those three paragraphs.
Kira, unmute yourself for 1 second and tell me exactly where.
It starts with my latest greatest wish.
Okay, gotcha.
It goes to the bottom, the paragraph on the top of page 141.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here's Jazzy's description of Buster Boudreaux. My latest greatest wish is to be walked home by the mysterious older boy with the weird last name, Buster Boudreaux, an 8th grader who moved into the neighborhood over the summer. His is the brown shingled house in the middle of the next block. It isn't Buster's stocky build, his tan brown skin, his cool confidence, or the slight dip in his walk. Nor is it his bowl-shaped afro with a part on the side, or even his hazel eyes that enchants me, although none of those attributes are lost on me. It's a feature that I, in my whole 12 years on this earth, have never seen or thought possible that a young boy could possess. A shimmering ball of gray hair that sits squarely in the middle of his afro. I mean, holy moly, what kid has gray hair, let alone the whole bushel of it? That's Buster.
That's Buster. How fun. Thank you for that. An extra little treat there. And we can picture Buster with such ease hearing you describe him. It's really lovely. So there are a couple other questions in the chat. I'm mindful of the time and where we are getting to. Let's see here. Okay, I do have one question for kind of the final question. I'm gonna here's a process question from Dr. Valerie Miles Tribble, one of our faculty. So it's kind of a multi-part question. So thinking about writer's process is the way I would describe it. So she's kind of saying, can you talk about the journey of getting what's inside to the outside, or invoicing? And she wonders about, what benefits you have found in like writers' workshops or, conferences, those kinds of things. And if you used a coach, a writing coach, or someone else that helped or guided you to get the story out and then into print.
Oh gosh, my process is not straightforward. My process is, I think that when I first start out on a piece, whatever it's going to be, whether it's the next book or poetry or just thoughts or whatever, when I first start out, I think because initially it hits me like a bolt of lightning. whatever that is, whatever words are coming to me, that just kind of hits me like a bolt of lightning. And then I just have to stop doing whatever I'm doing and just start writing. And I usually first start to write freehand, like no computer, just a pen and paper. And I just start going at it until I get to whatever that end is in that moment. And then, you know, life happens as it did, writing this. And then I remember when I was getting towards what I knew was going to be the end of the book, I was having a really hard time with a particular passage. And it was a particularly hard time because it required me to revisit something that was something that happened for real in my life, and it forced me to have to kind of revisit that.
Yeah.
But when I opened myself up to that and knew that I would still come out okay, still come out feeling safe, I just let the tears come. And the tears just came, and I mean, the tears flowed out of me like crazy. And at the same time, I was writing that scene.
Wow.
While the tears were like drenching. But it was like part of one of the truest moments in my writing that I've ever had.
Wow.
But so again, I don't have a particular way that I write, but I once I know what's happening, I'm very committed to it until we get to the end, even if it takes 20 years. It's going to happen. Did I have any? There was another. She asked me about.
Did you have a coach or mentor that kind of guided you through the process?
I absolutely had. Yeah, I absolutely had mentors, especially when I was doing my MFA at CCA, and when we were charged with doing our thesis project. This was actually part of my thesis project, and it was still in the very early stages. It was still it needed a lot of work. And I also was working on something else that will eventually become, I believe, a book. But it's a story that has challenged me in that it's a very, very serious, very, very painful thing to write. And my greatest mentor when I was doing my MFA at CCA was the amazing, magical Dr. Opal Palmer Adisa. She's a Jamaican writer. She's a poet. She's a phenomenal poet. And she was one of my mentors at CCA. And when she read the particular story that I've not really said anything about, she read it back then. She read what I had written thus far back then. And after she read it, she looked at me and she said, "Why haven't you written this?" And I told her all of the reasons why I could not. And she looked at me and she put the manuscript down as it was. And she looked at me and she said, "No one can write this except you. No one can write this." She said, "Yes, there are many stories about this, but only you can write this one." And the
Wow.
moment those words came out of her mouth, I just started boohooing like crazy because there was nothing that she said that wasn't true. But she just had the gumption to tell me what was true, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's a book for another time.
Okay.
But I've had many wonderful mentors, and I'm grateful for every last one of them.
Wonderful. Well, I am going to ask you one last question that was on my list and that somebody asked in the chat. But before I ask that, I'm going to let people know that after this last question, we are going to share a link in the chat directly to Kat's book where you can purchase it from a local bookseller. And I will say more about that in a few moments. So if you don't have it yet, and this conversation has intrigued you and you're thinking, I'm going to buy that book, wait 5 minutes so that we can share with you a preferred place for purchase if you don't have it yet. So, but before that, kind of our last question, and that is, of course, what advice would you give to folks who have a story in their spirit that's still there, that they're holding, that they haven't shared, maybe haven't spoken out loud, maybe haven't told anyone? What's your advice?
Well, I would just pass along the same advice that I got from my mentor, and that is, no one can tell your story except you. And you have to believe that whatever your story is, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, poetry, whatever it is, historical, only you know how to do that. Only you will know how to tell that. And you just have to trust in everything that's good, including you, that story has to, needs to, and must be told. And it's going to matter. It's going to matter. Because even after you're no longer here in this earthly realm, what you shared with the world will matter. It will still be here, and it will still resonate with somebody, even if it's one person, it's going to resonate with someone. So please, please, please write your story. Write your story.
I heard you say your story matters. Thank you for that. Good advice. I hope you all heard it. Those of you that are here and you have a story in your heart, something on your spirit. Kat, I could sit here and talk to you for another hour. These good folks signed up to be with us just for 1 hour. So we won't be able to do that today. But when that next story comes out, we're going to have to do this again, right?
Yeah.
So just know I'll be waiting and I'll be ready to ask. I cannot thank you enough for being with us for this hour and for sharing from your heart, for reading your words so that we too can imagine this neighborhood and these beautiful children and adults who are part of Pieces of 8, a Harper family mixtape. It's been a gift to be in conversation with you. Melissa, I'm going to ask if you'll share the link in the chat. Kat's book, Pieces of 8, a Harper family mixtape, can be purchased through that link that Melissa just shared. Both Kat and BST encourage you, if you don't have the book yet, to make your purchase using this link to Marcus Books, Oakland's legendary Black-owned bookstore, where if you look on their website, it says Black is not a subject, a single month or a niche. It is the universe. Black is not just history, it is the present and the future. And so we invite you to support not only Kat, but also the larger family and community through a local bookstore. Thanks again, Kat.
Thank
We
you.
need to make a few announcements before we log off today. There's a lot happening right now in the BST community. Our spring semester started this week. And of course, since we just started a new semester, that also means that we're also looking for the folks who will begin here in the next semester. So next week, on Tuesday, February 11th, Wednesday, February 12th, and Thursday, February 13th, we have various introductions to BST programs for people that are interested. So if you know people in your life who are leaders, change makers, who recognize this moment for what it is and want to make a difference, please send them our way. We'd love to be their partner in getting equipped for bringing about the world that we all hope for and long for and need. I also want to invite you to join us for our winter virtual alumni gathering, which is called Hope in Spiritual Care on Thursday, February 27th. It'll be on Zoom from 4 to 7 p.m. Pacific time. You can register through our website to get the link for that. Melissa has dropped that in the chat for you. It's going to be a fun evening where we'll do, like I said, some fun celebrating and socializing, and I'll also be moderating a panel discussion of folks that are BST alums who are providing spiritual care in various settings in their community. And next month, of course, we'll be back for First Friday Lunch and Learn on Friday, March 7th, where Dr. Laura Jean Torgerson will be talking about the gospel in your town, reading the Bible for liberation. So we hope you'll join us for that. Thank you again, everyone, for being with us today. It's just been lovely to see you. Thank you for your questions. That we weren't able to get to all of them. So feel free to send them another way. You can find Kat's email on the website. Maybe I shouldn't tell you that, but if you have direct questions for her, shoot them her way. We're just delighted to see you all and hope that we'll see you again next month. Have a great Friday and a great weekend, everyone. Take care of each other. Bye.